Hello, Duke fans. Welcome in to the Duke Blue Devils Insider Podcast, your daily podcast for all things Duke Blue Devils news. My name is Hugh Strain, your daily host, as well as beat writer at Duke Blue Devils on SI. We thank you, just like every day, tuning in for today. We thank you so much for doing so, and please continue to watch our show every day to get your latest scoop on the Duke Blue Devils. As all fans know at this point, if you're tuning into our podcast or follow Duke in any capacity at all, you know that Saturday night is the first edition of the best rivalry in college basketball. The Duke Blue Devils will take on the North Carolina Tar Heels in Chapel Hill on Saturday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the first edition of the best rivalry in all of college basketball. And not only is this game just the classic game that all Duke and UNC fans are looking forward to and all college basketball diehard fans are looking forward to every single year, but this matchup feels a bit different. I think this is a year where Duke and North Carolina match up on paper better than it's been in any of the last few years. Duke went 3-0 against UNC a year ago. It was obviously a much better team than North Carolina. Duke earned a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. North Carolina made it as one of the last 4 teams in. Probably didn't deserve it based on the resume. Was around a 64 exit nonetheless. Duke went 3-0. But this year's group on both sides matches up very, very well against each other, and I think poses a really, really interesting matchup, mainly because Duke won't have the major size advantage that it's had in practically every single game so far this season. Duke is the second tallest team in college basketball. The shortest player on the roster is Caden Boozer at 6'4", and Duke has lived in the paint on offense through conference play, and that's the reason it's been dominant. Duke's won 7 of its last 8 games by double digits. It's won all 10 of its league games on a 10-game winning streak right now. But North Carolina is one of those teams that can cause problems inside, one of the very few teams that actually has the makeup and the personnel to do that. Duke is the second tallest team in the country, like we just said. North Carolina is the third tallest team in the country, and they're hot themselves. UNC has won 4 in a row while averaging 88.5 points scored per game over that span. Now, UNC isn't an elite defensive team. It ranks 56th nationally at KenPom in adjusted defensive efficiency. Overall, the guard play somewhat lacks. It's not elite like Duke's is. Duke is, according to KenPom, the 3rd best defensive team in the country, but UNC is 56th in adjusted defensive efficiency. They're 22nd, however, in effective field goal percentage, and they are 5th in opponent two-point shooting percentage at 44%. They're also 187th in opponent three-point shooting percentage at 34.1%. But that sort of proves my point. North Carolina has maybe the most productive front court duo in the entire country in 7-footer Henry Vasar and 6'10" Caleb Wilson. The two are the Tar Heels' leading scorers and rebounders, combined for about 38 points and 18 rebounds per game between the two. And we mentioned on yesterday's show, if you watched, that this feels like the game where Cameron Boozer can finally be held in check. There's a UNC front court that's very, very good on the defensive side of the ball. We just mentioned 5th nationally in opponent two-point shooting percentage, with the length with Vasar and Wilson to double Cameron Boozer if they need to and shut him down. This feels like the game where it actually could happen. And again, shut down for Cam Boozer means, say, 15 points and 6 boards. You know, for Cam Boozer is the second leading scorer in the country at over 23 points per game and almost 10 rebounds. Shut down for him is still a very productive night for most college players. He just happens to be the best player in all of college basketball. But that's where this question sort of poses from, is if North Carolina is able to shut Cameron Boozer down, where does Duke go for its offense? Duke has proven that it has talent offensively, but it's never really had to produce without Cam Boozer. He's been in double figures every single game this season. He's got 11 double-doubles. He's got 4 30-point games. Again, he's been the best player in all of college basketball, and there has been no answer for any opponent against him. He's been the center of attention for every single defensive game plan, and it hasn't mattered. But this feels like the game on the road against maybe the best defensive front court in the nation where it could happen. And where does Duke go if that does actually take place and it needs offense? Duke has talent from a scoring perspective. Isaiah Evans, Patrick Gungba's made a massive jump. Caleb Foster, Nick Hamenya, even guys like Darren Harris, Dame Sarr, you know it's there. It just hasn't really shown yet. But they've got guys who can score. The problem is they haven't had to yet. And we all as Duke fans know who the second option on this team is. It's Isaiah Evans. He hasn't exactly put together the breakout season that I think a lot of fans and insiders around college basketball were looking for, but he's still been extremely productive. However, he's been very cold as of late, which could become a major part of this game. We mentioned how weak North Carolina is in terms of three-point shooting defense. That could be a major factor. They're 187th nationally. If Cameron Boozer isn't getting his way, Isaiah Evans will need to produce. So after a bit of an inconsistent start to the season altogether, Evans was elite to begin conference play. Over Duke's first 4 ACC games, he was averaging 22.3 points per game on 41% shooting from 3. However, over Duke's last 4 ACC games, he has been ice cold. Granted, it hasn't really mattered because Duke's gotten in the paint at will, but Isaiah Evans has not been nearly as great. Over Duke's last 4 games, he's averaging just 12.3 points on just 5 of 24 shooting from 3. That's a 20.8% clip. Why are we talking about Isaiah Evans? Why is that significant? Because his cold streak hasn't really mattered. John Shire said it before, this team lives inside the paint and works well inside out. Over conference play, Duke has won 7 of its last 8 games by double digits. It has gotten into the paint at will and been dominant as it's done so. Over the team's last 5 games, Duke has outscored its opponents 218-88 in the paint. That is a plus 130 margin, while also only allowing one opponent over that stretch to eclipse 20 points in the paint. However, Duke has not shot the 3 well as a whole over that stretch. So over that same 5-game stretch, again, outscoring its opponents 218-88 in the paint, Duke as a team has shot the 3 at just 29 of 97. That's 29.9% as a team. Now, it doesn't feel like a massive storyline because it really hasn't mattered because Duke's used the paint. And early on in conference play and late in the non-con slate, felt like Duke was forcing a lot of 3-point shots. But John Shire has made the adjustment, and this team gets into the paint at will and scores at will because it gets into the paint with intent and works out of that. A plus 130 stretch over 5 games in paint points been absolutely dominant. That might not be the case on Saturday. With North Carolina's defensive front court, they have the makeup and the personnel that maybe no other team in the country has, potentially with the exception of maybe Arizona, to match up with Duke and legitimately make it a challenge or at least match Duke's production inside. UNC is 187th in 3-point opponent shooting percentage. It is 5th in opponent 2-point percentage on a national scale. Duke will probably need the 3-point shot to really take down this North Carolina team, especially a North Carolina team that's been hot offensively as of late. Again, 88.5 points per game over its last 4 games where it's won all 4. Now, I think it's safe to say even on the road, Duke will probably hold North Carolina to under that standard, that 88.5 points per game. But Duke will probably need to shoot the 3 ball at least a decent clip. North Carolina is not a fantastic 3-point shooting team. Their guard play isn't fantastic really in general. Seth Trimble's a very good player. Outside of him, Keon Evans has been fine. Derek Dixon's shown some flashes, but they don't really have elite guards outside of Seth Trimble, who's I wouldn't say is elite. He's a very good player. I wouldn't call him elite, though. I think Duke is far and away better than North Carolina from the 1 through 3 positions on the floor. But down low is where this game is going to be very interesting, and it's where the winner's really going to emerge. And we mentioned Henry Vasar. He's an elite defender, the second leading scorer on this team. But it's Caleb Wilson who will be a really fun matchup, especially on Cameron Boozer. We mentioned it on the show the other day. Cameron Boozer and Caleb Wilson might be the best matchup college basketball could possibly produce, one-on-one matchup. Interestingly enough, so Boozer and Wilson are both projected top 5 picks in the NBA draft. Most mocks have Boozer going 3rd and Wilson going 4th. Some even have Wilson over Boozer, but that tends to be the consensus. So this will be the first time, in all likelihood, that both Duke and North Carolina have a top 5 pick in the same season since 1989. Most of that has to do with the fault of North Carolina. Their last lottery picks came in 2019. It was Kobe White and Cam Johnson. Duke has obviously had a plethora of lottery picks over the years, had 2 just last season in the top 5. Cooper Flagg went number 1 to the Dallas Mavericks. Colin Knippel went 4th to the Charlotte Hornets. But this is potentially the best matchup college basketball could possibly produce, and Caleb Wilson has been on a heater as of late. Over the Heels 4-game winning streak, Wilson is averaging 21.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.3 steals, and a block a night on 59.6% shooting from the field and 73.3% shooting from the charity stripe. And he's doing it on really high volume. He's averaged 13 shot attempts and 7.5 free throw attempts per game over that stretch. Two of the most talented freshmen in college basketball, two in all likelihood top 5 picks in the NBA draft going head to head. Very, very, very fun matchup. But the supporting cast is what is going to make this game. Guys like Isaiah Evans, who's been ice cold, like Pat Gungba, even Malik Brown, who started to show a bit of scoring prowess over the last few games. Guys like Darren Harris and Nick Hamenya and Caleb Foster. They're going to be the X factors in this game because I think it's safe to assume that Cameron Boozer won't be putting up 27 and 15. If he does, give him the National Player of the Year award right now because this is by far the toughest matchup he's going to have with Vason Wilson. If it's no problem for him, give him the National Player of the Year award. The competition's over. Not that it's competition right now, but just give it to him. It's done. If Cameron Boozer is at least held in check, say 15 points or less, it's going to come down to the supporting cast around him. And this will tell a lot about Duke as a team if it can produce when Cameron Boozer isn't being elite and isn't the focal point of attention. If North Carolina can successfully shut him down, that will be a major storyline in game to follow. That's what we were talking about on the show here today. I think the burning question heading into Duke versus North Carolina on Saturday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to do it from the show for us here today. Once again, we thank you so much for tuning in today as well as every day to the Duke Blue Devils Insider Podcast. To stay up to date with everything Duke Blue Devils athletics, make sure to check us out at si.com/college/Duke. My name is Hugh Strain, your daily host as well as beat writer at Duke Blue Devils on SI. I'll see you tomorrow.